Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining, and welcome to this another TopoDOT webinar series. Today, we're going to be discussing the TopoDOT Connect environment, the interface, things like that. It'll just be me for today. So I'm Mike, lead applications engineer for TopoDOT. I got a bachelor's of mechanical at the local university. Been here for 10 plus years. I work with the support, development, and sales teams. Native Floridian, outdoorsy and adventurous. I got a little cartoon picture here of me. It's pretty close to what I look like. So the agenda for today, and after the agenda, I'm going to launch a few poll questions just to help me gauge the audience here, and also help us understand, which products you're using. So we're going to be going through, why TopoDOT Connect? What are the benefits over the older V8i platform? We'll talk a little bit about the differences between update 12 and 13, and why is it a concern? We're going to be looking at utilizing the ribbon if you're not familiar with it, such as like searching or where to find a button, and a little bit of light customization. We'll point you in a few directions, but toolbars, function keys, best way to find a key in if you're looking to set something up with a function key. And then we're going to talk about, what product is best for you on the Bentley side for the Connect platform. And I'll point you to Techno 1030 once here and once again later on. And then just to kind of finalize it, want to make sure you're familiar with a couple of items, especially if you're a new beginner or you're just looking to explore and learn some more stuff. All right, so before we begin, let me go ahead and launch our first polling question. Make sure you guys are awake. So we'll launch, and this is just going to be, what are you using? Are there still V8i users out there? I know they are, but I just want to know what's the split between V8i and Connect. Looks like we got a lot of people using both. It's good enough? Okay. So go ahead and close the poll. Let's go ahead and launch our next question. All right, so I think that's enough time there. It looks like we got a lot of open row design users, which is actually quite interesting. But again, the majority here are going to be MicroStation users, and then it looks like we're split with kind of a half and half between V8i and Connect, really. All right, so we'll go ahead and close this poll, and we'll start the next one. And that will be it for polls up front, and then we'll do some polling later on. And in this case, so it's looking like we're more on the Bentley user side. There is a handful of AutoCAD users, which is typical. It's not surprising because we do have those clients. And it looks like there is also a equal amount of users who use both. Okay, so let's go ahead and close that one, and we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for kind of participating. This will kind of help us, obviously, tune and tweak things, or release content specific to, this information. So after let's get into our first topic. All right, so why TopoDOT and Connect? And really, this is for the V8i users out there. If you're hesitant on making the switch, here's kind of a good layout. So going to Connect, the point count ramped up is going to be ramped up if for those of you who in V8i or who used to work in V8i, you remember the 85 million point count limits. This has to do with RAM. So we have, access to the available RAM now. So we're not limited to like 2.5 gigs. This is going to allow us to bring in, close to like 100 or 1 billion points. But comfortably, I'd say 800 million points is usually average for an average machine. Connect is going to carry all the latest and greatest tools that TopoDOT has to offer. V8i is basically locked in with a legacy version, and these latest TopoDOT tools basically mean improved workflows, such as like the conversion wizard, tiling. Conversion wizard, tiling, parsing, supported formats, exports, merging imagery, previewing contents, and really just a couple of buttons and knobs on tool interfaces have been refined. Optimization, if you're familiar with it, that's kind of being replaced or phased out with the level of detail feature that we have. And this is mainly going to apply for MLS data, airborne data, UAS, UAV. Usually those are pretty uniform densities. However, optimization does still apply towards static. And the reason for that is static's going to, it's going to carry, we're still noticing like the error points at the origin, and just the densities alone are still very high. So there is some benefit there to optimization. Searching for tools has never been easier with the new ribbon. So this, you could search for both TopoDOT and MicroStation tools itself. And if you're tied to the taskbar, don't worry. Connect, it carries it. It has an option for you. So for those of you coming from V8i straight into Connect, it won't be too much of a shock. And then finally, the coordinate system. We're using TopoAerial to pull in images. Previously, it used to be tied to a TopoDOT library. Now it's just going to be linked to the library on MicroStation. So once you set the coordinate system, you just forget about it and play around with the aerial tools right away. All right, a quick visual between the V8i environment and Connect. We got V8i at the top and Connect down below. And here we just have common regions in green. So we got the toolbars. All right, so the toolbars at the top. We have the taskbar, okay, in both. There's the tool dialog box, that infamous floating box. And it doesn't go away, by the way. See people once in a while try to close it. It just will pop right back up. And then all the newer regions for Connect are going to be in red. So that's the, they kind of took the tabs and they rolled it out into like a ribbon style. You got the search field to the right, and then your workflows at the top. All right, so while we're talking about Connect, there's an update 12 and 13. And this is specifically for MicroStation. I want to try and like clarify this, and I'll try and do that towards the end too. So update 12 and 13, I'm referring to MicroStation Connect right now. So activating the taskbar, what's the differences between these two? So now, well, it used to be in update 12 that you would set up a configuration variable, and if you're still on that platform, we have a tech note to help you with that. It's 1034. But if you're in 13 now, it's going to be a workflow feature. So you essentially just set the workflow, and then there's going to be a VDI task theme for you to choose from. So just to kind of give you some visuals, we got the taskbar to the right, so that's easy enough. But at the bottom, we have what update 13 looks like. So those are the two workflows. So we have a task navigation workflow and a TopoDOT workflow. If you switch, we'll start off with the task navigation one. If you switch the task navigation, you'll get the option to select the VDI task theme. And if you go with this workflow, this is something that we're going to recommend. This is going to give you the taskbar automatically. So you'll switch it to the task navigation, and then you'll switch it to the VDI task theme. The benefits here are going to be the keyboard shortcuts are going to work for both the taskbar and the ribbon. And as an alternative, we have the TopoDOT workflow, which was also available for update 12. This is the taskbar is not going to be available automatically. You're going to have to manually activate this, and you would do so with the TopoDOT key-in to launch that taskbar. So it is still there, but it's not going to be automatic. And the shortcut keys are only going to be tuned for the ribbon. So keep that in mind if you're really used to the position mapping keys to launch tools. So we're going to do our best to move forward with update 13. And again, we're going to recommend the task navigation workflow. Whatever is going to be best for you. Obviously, we're going to be leaning towards task navigation, but if you don't need the taskbar, feel free to work with the TopoDOT workflow. It's going to be a preference from here on out. All right, utilizing the ribbon. So that's going to be your upper right-hand corner. I have a little shot of it right here, zoomed in. And you can see that F4 is going to basically focus on this. So if you are in a hurry, just hit F4 and you can start typing, or click on it and start typing. The nice thing though is you can easily find tools. Before you had to maybe search it on Google or your MicroStation, but you're also going to get a drop-down menu that shows recent tools, and it's also going to show you where that button lives in a couple of locations. So sometimes you might want to find it in a particular tab within the taskbar somewhere. You should be able to find that. So this is for also both TopoDOT and Connect tools. Now the auto hide portion of this, that's going to be the little down arrow next to the search field, not in the search field, but next to it. And this is going to save a little bit on screen real estate. Sometimes the tab or the ribbon does kind of take up a bit of space, so I do see some users taking advantage of that. So there's those position mapping keys that I was talking about earlier. So these are going to be for launching tools. And in the past, they're obviously tied to the taskbar. These are going to be single characters that will launch. So you start off with like Q and then go to 1, then it will launch a specific tool. If you need to get into the ribbon, you'll hold Alt first and then go into your single character and then whichever follows to launch a specific tool. It takes a little getting used to, but it's not so bad. Yeah, I do like that feature. So that's why we also recommended the task navigation workflow. A little bit about customizing your setup. So toolbars, This is going to retain some similarities between 32-bit and 64-bit. And I like the toolbars, and a few others like the toolbars because it's a nice, compact, useful set of tools. There's no searching the taskbar or searching in the ribbon. It's just right up front. It's basically a panel of buttons. When it comes to function keys, button assignments, and keyboard shortcuts, these are still very useful to take advantage of too. The function keys are, basically keys tied to an action, such as launching a tool. The button assignments are for mouse and keyboard combinations to perform a specific task. And then the keyboard shortcuts are for a variety of things. And I'll kind of give you some examples here. So for like a button assignment, I have my shift and data button set up to do a pan scrolling routine. For the keyboard shortcuts, so we have basically, there's a position mapping one and there's an AccuDraw one. So an example for the AccuDraw one would be like J. I set that up to toggle the AccuSnap. Sometimes it's beneficial when you're in like a cross-section view to toggle that off. That is something that you would have to input, but you can easily find that within the AccuDraw settings. For the function keys, you can actually use F7 to even get you to that shortcut list, which is kind of nice. If you're not familiar with that list, I would definitely take a look at it. If you are going to be setting up function keys, you do want to leave out F2, just leave that blank, as TopoDOT will use that. Basically, it's going to be used for, one example that comes to mind is the tagging feature. So if you're going to be tagging attributes and you want to enter your own custom value, we use F2 to do so. Just to kind of clarify a little bit on position mapping versus AccuDraw. So position mapping is going to launch that particular tool either from the taskbar or the ribbon, kind of like what I mentioned before, the single character, Q1 will open up like image browser. AccuDraw is more tuned for, when you launch the drawing command, when you're actually drawing, this will actually launch specific actions. For example, the toggle AccuSnap that I already mentioned, or, draw to a specific point, like an XYZ point. You can rotate the orientation of how you're drawing. You can constrain to the X direction, and that's just a small example. There's a huge list of them. For customizing your ribbon, actually, let's not jump ahead of ourselves here. If you are setting up one of these assignments for the key-ins and whatnot and function keys, you do need to know the action of something to even launch it. So the best way to really find that, maybe on the TopoDOT side, is you could just use the key-in browser. So that's going to be this panel right here. You'll find most of the TopoDOT tools in our TopoDOT app, and then from there, the majority of the tools are going to have a very similar naming convention to the header of the interface of each tool. So that's kind of nice. For those more advanced users, or you need a little bit more information, or finding like a command that MicroStation has, you can always go into File Settings, Configuration, and Customize. And this will take you to the DGN libs for not only TopoDOT, but also the MicroStation commands too. So you can kind of search and navigate, and it'll tell you the action key for that. So an action key, again, is just, if we look at this key in up here, similar to a key in, it's just a kind of a line for you to launch something. So hit the button. All right, customizing our ribbon. We're going to be launching a a tech note in the future for this, so stay tuned, but a brief look at this. Basically, if you need a general starting point on just understanding what's what and the terminology behind it, definitely take a look at the link below. This is going to help for sure with just the interface and layout and the terminology within the Connect environment. You can modify your personal DGN lib, but if you're setting things up for other users, we want to stay away from this, and you want to focus on like a separate DGN lib, which is stored, as we can see in here, a specific folder for my user in this case. So we have a C users username. Mine would be like mcook, for example. Document standards DGN lib GUI. You would throw that file in there, and MicroStation will recognize it. Now, this will be a future tech note, so again, stay tuned. So we'll add as much information as we can, maybe even a little bit more on top of just modifying a tab. But I threw in the tab option here because it was somewhat beneficial because there was a little bit of tab hopping for some tools. So if you are kind of like customizing a ribbon tab, you can kind of keep everything in that one tab. That way you're not too focused on remembering all of the position mapping keys to launch it to another tab, and you're not bouncing around. All right, so what is the best Bentley product for you? Well, this is going to be preference, but this is just kind of guidance if you're not really sure. If you're primarily a Civil 3D user, PowerDraft might be a good route to take. It's a nice bare bones 3D CAD engine. TopoDOT, all the functionality is there available for you. If you can export to a DWG, you can work directly, in a DWG, or use our feature code export to get, any extracted information out of this environment and into your Civil 3D environment. If you're primarily in MicroStation, basically just the vanilla, straightforward, very common MicroStation CONNECT, then MicroStation CONNECT is going to be your pick. So it's basically your comprehensive 3D CAD engine. It's got solid surface modeling. It's got its mesh modeling and a few animation features as well. Keep in mind it doesn't have a DTM feature, so there is no terrain or surface building in here. I know it does have the mesh modeling, but it's more of a mesh, not necessarily a true DTM. But it's a very common, well-rounded environment to be in. For those of you who are relying on building a DTM surface or a terrain, open roads is probably going to be your pick. And I know there's a couple of varieties of open roads, but the one we hear the most is ORD. Just to point out, there is a nice little drive-through feature for fly-throughs. So if you're looking to assist yourself in like a presentation or put something together, that is a nice little feature. We'd like to point out if you are an ORD, use the TopoDOT workflow only. And again, if you want to activate the taskbar, there's that key in. And do not use the older configuration variable to activate the taskbar. For more information, we have a little spreadsheet on not only these three products but a few others. Check out our tech note 1030 via this link, and you'll see our comparisons. Some top items to be familiar with, especially if you're getting started. If you're an avid user or you've been working with Connect for maybe a year, and one of these on the screen does not look familiar to you, I would say start to get familiar with it, because these are some fundamental items that we usually recommend. You know, the MicroStation basics is basically just kind of setting up your drawing and knowing where everything is, how to attach, how to tweak. You know, when you're drawing, you need to know how to like navigate. What are you drawing? What level is it? Things like that. And then the more advanced side is the 3D space and your ACS and things like that. So I'm not going to get into too much detail on this. I just want to point these out. We do have a walkthrough on the fundamentals, which is going to be found on a university page. So if you're looking for, this in action, walking through the settings, changing them, pointing where they are, then I do recommend checking out this video. Now the video it did occur prior to update 13, so it is going to mention the configuration variable. So again, users who are 12 and below, go ahead and use the configuration variable for the taskbar. But if you're update 13 and moving forward with that, then you can just ignore that configuration variable because it's a workflow now. If you're in a state that does not have a DOT workspace yet for Connect, then I would recommend the 1041 tech note. This just kind of helps guide you in mimicking a DOT workspace. Where do I attach my cell file? How do I set up a seed file with these cells attached? How do I get my level structure correct? Things like that. And we kind of bundle it in a way so that you can, copy these settings for other users. So the next tech note that I'm going to point out is the 1041. And this is basically, you want to copy either all of your TopoDOT settings and or MicroStation settings to the other machines. And again, it's a nice, simple guideline to follow to help you accomplish that. And then some important reminders at the end. So we're going to kind of wrap this up and I'll launch another poll question. The TopoDOT Connect environment, it's going to bring a massive point count boost along with obviously the latest and greatest TopoDOT features. Remember that Connect is the platform, which is the 64-bit platform that Bentley is offering, but it's the platform for the variety of their products. And we had mentioned some of those products, PowerDrive, MicroStation, and RRD. TopoDOT works on this Connect platform. Okay, if you have a random product, but it's on the Connect platform, you can always verify it with us to see if it works, but for the most part, it should work. The last required update, if you've been with us since update 7 for Connect, has been 7. Now, coming up here with the next release, the required update is going to be 13. So, if you're unsure about what's happening, definitely consult with your IT or, contact us. And, this is, again, for MicroStation itself. So update 13, well, ORD isn't necessarily update 13. So the trick here is to basically look at the release date of MicroStation Connect and then compare that to the other products. And this will kind of help you get a reference for, what update it is or, where it is on the Connect update. So the numbers may not match, but the dates should kind of give you an idea on what's what. And then for those of you moving from V8i to Connect, we recommend the task navigation workflow for the taskbar and the ribbon. And for the RRD users, do not use the configuration variable for the taskbar. Use the key in that we have. TopoDOT still requires you to use AccuDraw. And when you're going through setups, make sure you save your settings, not just save when you're modifying everything. And also to stick around for our webinar on Friday, as this is going to go through the latest features of TopoDOT specifically, not a TopoDOT Connect kind of environment like this one. So before we end here, I'm going to go ahead and launch another question relevant to this. And so I just want to know, what's the final verdict of the taskbar or the ribbon? Who are diehard users using the taskbar, or maybe even if you're diehard, you've given up on the taskbar, you're going to the ribbon. What should we focus on moving forward? And don't worry, we're not going to leave those taskbar users behind. I'm still kind of a diehard fan of it too. So my vote would be taskbar. My second vote would be both. All right, so close that a little bit short, so I apologize if you didn't get your vote in. And then also one more question. Are you using a DOT workspace, or are you just working outside of a DOT workspace and then trying to figure out how to get it into that format? We do see a lot of people, just working, extracting, making sure their levels are okay, and then they kick it over to like a V&I workspace to do their final modifications, and then turn it over as a deliverable. All right. Give a few more seconds for that. All right, looks like the majority of the votes going to be yes, we are working in a DOT's workspace. That's good to know. All right, so to finalize this, let's take a look at our next step here. We're going to open this up for questions. We have probably had a few typed in questions. If you have a question right now, you can always raise your hand. But staff, if I can ask you to help out at this point, which one should I focus on?
Sure.
Yeah, so we have a.
Oh, go ahead, Mauri.
Yep, we have a question here for do you guys have a list of some customized functions or buttons that you find useful? For example, he has Shift plus Data for pan scroll, F3 for the quick adjust line work. But do we have any other like tech notes or available list anywhere?
I would actually say maybe that can kind of evolve into the upcoming customization thing. So that's a good question, and I think we'll keep it in mind for this upcoming techno.
Okay. See, there's not too many questions here. Yeah, that's really the Jennifer. Did you have another one there?
Oh yeah. If you want to talk about this one a little bit more about most DOTs don't want users to customize their DOT workspace. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're not looking to customize the DOT workspace. What the techno really just points out is if your state has not moved to the Connect platform, you might not have a space to work in. So the idea is to mimic what is available in V&I in the Connect platform. And you're not going to get everything, but you're trying to get as close as possible so that when you do take your final DGN and move it into that V&I DOT workspace, that there's, it's kind of like a seamless transition. But yeah, it's a good point. We're not going to be modifying any Connect DOT workspace. You don't want to do that.
Right, and any of the customization you are doing is going to be specifically in your own DGN lib specifically for the power bar and whatnot. But The other question here, or more so of a comment, is instead of referencing the MicroStation release number, such as release 13, it would be easier to reference the actual version number for some of the IT, such as like 10.8.1.33. Now, I do want to note that we don't require that specific release. What we require is a release newer than that, or at least that version. So, but in the future, yeah, it might benefit us to actually specify the release for each product, like ORD, Power Draft, and such. Is there a way now to export a DTM or XML out of TopoDOT? We don't have a DTM export out of TopoDOT. What we do is we rely on something like ORD, or if you're in V8i, would be Geopack or Inroads to do that export. TopoDOT itself doesn't have the DTM engine built. Is there a preferred method for getting an accurate elevation from a point cloud other than hovering the cursor over the data in the cross-section view? Do you have anything for that, Mike?
Maybe if you like snap to the data or snap a point in, you can get an elevation reading from it. I'm not sure. I'd actually have to play around with that.
We also have a key in for querying the point cloud itself, to where you click and it looks at a bit of data around your cursor and just shows you all the point cloud coordinates. That might be helpful for you. That's all the questions that have come in so far. So if you have anything else, feel free to type it into the chat. Someone's asking here regarding the drive-through or fly-through in ORD. Is there a university or training session on that anywhere?
That's on our plan to try to implement it. We usually have a class during talk to go through fly-through creation and editing those kind of movies. And so we will try to implement that for next year. But if we can make it available sooner than that, it'll be on the university, and we'll make you guys aware of that. We'll send an email about that. But yeah, it's something that we're already it's already in our plan. So I think since we don't have any more questions, we're gonna go ahead and close the webinar. Thank you very much for attending. We're gonna have another presentation, which is today at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And it's going to be a little bit more interactive. We're going to go actually into TopoDOT and show you a couple more things. This is for data management. So hopefully we'll see you at 1 p.m. today. Thank you very much.